Anyway, now that Zoom Siri has told us that we are recording, I'm going to get started because the first couple slides are housekeeping stuff. So folks who are joining us later aren't going to miss anything. So I hope you all enjoy this wonderful graphic that Heather found. I feel like if you use dashboards and bulletins, this will resonate with you. So if your check data set light / apricot is on, we thought that this was funny. So welcome to Apricot Admin Camp, session 4. We are at the place in our agenda where we are going to be talking about dashboards and bulletins. I think anyone who has actively used Apricot will know what we're talking about, but if not, we're going to dive into it a bit today. Just to do some introductions, team is going to introduce themselves and we are going to tell you our favorite ways to use bulletins. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Janae Teal. I'm going to be your tour guide today. And my favorite thing to use in bulletins are linkable photos. And I'll be showing you that later today. Team, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Heather Eckert. I'll be helping answer your questions in the chat today. And my favorite way to use bulletins is adding a bit of color and branding to your home screen.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. My name is Helen. I'll be Zoom technical support today, and my favorite tool is inserting a picture into a bulletin. Oh, you're muted, Sarah.
You're saying wonderful things, I'm sure.
Yeah, for all the lip readers, they heard it already. But my favorite thing about bulletins is using them as feedback loops, so you can actually see the data and how that is connected to you.
Awesome. And we'll be talking about almost all of these things today. So just some general housekeeping, same as before. If you're not talking, please mute yourself. We haven't given you many opportunities to talk, so continue with that. If you have any questions, please use the chat. Sarah and Heather are going to be monitoring the chat to answer your questions. If you have any additional questions or would like some one-on-one support or just some general ways to receive some examples or whatever you want, come to office hours. This week, we're going to be switching it up, or I guess next week, we're going to be switching it up and doing a Tuesday, Wednesday instead of a Tuesday, Thursday. So just keep that in mind. Office hours have not been particularly busy. So if there's something you really are interested in just rocking out, come to office hours and we'll just help you. You can get a special one-on-one session. Like last time, if you were here with the session that Heather led, I was very inspired. So we are going to continue using the stamps, the animation type things. So if you don't know how to do that, you're going to go to your top screen where it says, I believe it will say Janae's screen. You are viewing Janae's screen. And next to that is a little view options. From there, Kate and Coda have already started showing off. You go down to annotate, and that will give you a new menu where you then can select stamp. Choose whichever one you want, and that's how we're going to ask you to participate on a few things today. For example, we want to just gauge what is your experience with bulletins. So here's a Venn diagram to give us an idea of how folks on the call have experienced or used bulletins. So please take a few minutes to put in your answers. All right. The folks at Open Arms, if you're not putting I use bulletins regularly, we need to talk. You should be using bulletins every minute. Okay, great. So it looks like there's a couple folks who don't use bulletins. That's okay. We're going to show you how cool they are and why you should use them throughout today's session. For those of you who are somewhere in the middle, that's okay. As an admin or a super user, you're probably going to have to get more familiar with bulletins, but that doesn't mean you have to be prepared right now. And for those of you who do use them regularly, I hope that you learned something that teaches you how to take your bulletins to the next level. Perfect. So I was wondering if you could all do a little select all that apply on what is the purpose of bulletins in Apricot? And that is the catest answer ever. All right. Perfect. Okay, great. Awesome. Love this. All right. Well, I'll show you a little bit later whether or not you are correct. So before we get any further, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to do a quick overview of bulletins, and most of you have heard these called dashboards. Know that they are interchangeable. They used to be called dashboards exclusively. The language has since changed, and Apricot is now referring to them more as bulletins than they are dashboards. So know that you didn't miss anything. We're talking about the same thing. They just have, two names now. So we're going to be going over the purpose of bulletins, the types of bulletins. We're going to do a little HTML 101. So for those of you who aren't sure what that means, you're going to learn. Don't let it freak you out. It's easier than you think. We're going to do a tour of bulletins, and then we have a surprise for you all. So I'm going to vague book on you and keep you hanging. So what is the purpose of a bulletin? And as you know, I just asked you this question, not that question. And all of you are right. So all of the options that were on that slide are actually the purpose of bulletins. And there's more reasons than I can possibly list on a slide. They're very, very versatile, very, very customizable. And so you can really use them for anything. But just a few examples. I use bulletins to create a custom experience for Apricot users. As an administrator, you're not going to get that. Just so you know, like, you do not get a custom experience. If you are an administrator, you have access to every single bulletin in your Apricot. Those of you who are administrators know that when you log in, there is no way to make your screen calm and clean. Like, you just get what you get. But that makes it even more important to use color and naming mechanisms and order. Very important, because as the person who has to manage all of those, you want to make sure that they're in an order that makes sense. I also use bulletins for program announcement and updates. So, hey, everybody get your home visit notes in by Friday. Hey, there's this cool webinar coming up on breastfeeding. Whatever it is, you can use bulletins to share information with all of your Apricot users. I also use bulletins to provide users with tips, links, or buttons that are related to workflow. So you'll often hear me call these shortcut buttons, and these are just a way to kind of cut out the amount of labor that staff would have to do in order to get to a certain part of the database. And we'll be showing you buttons later on. I also use bulletins for Apricot outcomes or monthly and quarterly reports, just so you don't have to get into the system too far. Reports that you need are just available at your fingertips. We use them for things like showing active clients and caseloads. A lot of folks who have home visitors and doulas, this is a game changer because you just have your clients available to you at all times. And then some of you use bulletins for monitoring incoming and outgoing referrals. So like I said, these are just some examples of things that you can do with bulletins, but I think these are the ones that are the most relevant to a lot of the work that you do. So let's talk about report bulletins first. So to preface, there are two types of bulletins. You have a report bulletin, which is what we're going to talk about first, and then you have what they call an HTML bulletin, which is what we're going to talk about next. I'm just going to walk you through, before we get into Apricot, kind of the elements of the bulletin builder, and then I'll actually show you where it is. So when you go in to make a report bulletin, the first thing that you're going to need to do is give it a title. Obviously, but your titles are very important because the title of your bulletin is what's going to show up on the actual bulletin. So you want to name it clear, like you want to give it a clear, detailed name, but also you don't want to write a paragraph. So it's just like you would name a report. You want it to be concise. So then the next thing is the type of report, or pardon me, the type of bulletin. So in this dropdown, you will have the option to select report or HTML. Really easy. And then the interface that you see kind of switches depending on what you click. The next thing is start and end date. This one's super easy and you often don't have to even pay attention to it, but just know that the start date is automatically going to default to today, the day you build the bulletin, and the end date is going to default to a year from now. And so if you log into Apricot one day and your bulletin is gone and you know you didn't delete it and you know your other admin didn't delete it, chances are it's expired. So I get into the best practice of putting it like ridiculously far out, because I'm like, all right, 2055 is when I want this bulletin to expire, because then you're not going to run into the chance of it just randomly disappearing. And that leads me to this next section, which is the active option and then the start collapse option. The reason I'm pretty flexible about what I put as the end date is because you can easily go in and deactivate a bulletin. So if you've got something that you use on a quarterly basis, or if you've got something where you're deactivating it because a staff is on leave and you don't need them to clutter your home screen, you can simply go in and deactivate it. Something cool about bulletins is that you can also delete them. Like, unlike anything else in Apricot where you can only deactivate, you can actually delete. So over in your bulletin options, you're going to see the option to delete, which is super cool. But I find that if I think I'm going to need it again, I just deactivate it. The next thing is that you're going to select the actual report. And so when you go to the report section, there's going to be a drop down. And it's going to be organized the exact way that your report folders are organized. So that's another reason that you want to have your report folder really well organized, so it's easy to find things when you go looking for them. And then this last thing, and I didn't know about this for way too long. I just kept it on 1 because I didn't really know what it meant. So what this means is it allows you to choose between 1 and 4. And I think some of you have seen bulletins where things will be next to each other. So instead of it being report, report, report stacked on top of itself, you can actually put elements of reports next to each other. So you can have one side be the list of data and you can have the other side be a bar chart. And so it allows you to put more information on your bulletin without having to scroll for 45 minutes to get through the whole report. So not required, but it's something that gives you a few more options when you're building a report. Sorry, I'm on one screen. I am not used to one screen. So here is an example of report bulletins. And this is also an example of the columns. So this bulletin is set to be a side-by-side. So what you're seeing here is actually 2 sections of the same report. So it's important to note that you can't attach 2 reports to the same bulletin, but you can have a report that has multiple sections. So this report has a section that shows intake count by program and a section that shows intake count by month. It could be that it was 1 report on top, 1 report on bottom, but I thought it was more visually pleasing to just quickly see them side by side. So this is just an example of what a report bulletin can look like. There is one thing that you need to remember. When you're making a report bulletin, you have to pay attention to permissions. So there's 3 elements of giving someone access to a report bulletin. The first is that they have to have access to the bulletin. I know that sounds dumb, but you will not even believe how many times I've made a bulletin and then been like, well, I can see it. Why can't they see it? You have to give them permission. They also have to have access to the actual report. So if they're not able to see the report, they're not going to be able to see the bulletin. So you have to make sure that when you're giving folks access, that you're not crossing boundaries of permissions. Like, you want to make sure that you're still respecting client confidentiality. So if someone doesn't have access to that report, ask yourself why before just granting them access to the bulletin. And then the last part is that you have to have access to all of the forms used in the report. It gets really tricky with guest users because, as we've talked about, they have limited number of forms that they can see. So when you're making a report that you're going to put on a bulletin, you need to make sure that anyone who needs to see that has access to the corresponding forms. All right, this is where we level up. I hope you're ready. This is one of my favorite parts of Apricot, but I also feel like I'm going to beam us into a computer science class. So hold on, but also know that if this is scary or goes over your head, or you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, we are going to be following up with a quick guide that walks you through this literally step by step. So don't get freaked out. Don't feel pressure to use these functionalities. It's just an additional layer of bulletins that you can use. So you'll see HTML bulletins, you use the same interface, but rather than have the type equal report, the type equals HTML. You still select start date, end date, active, collapse. Everything stays the same until you reach this section here. Not that section. So the first is use default color. Okay, default color in Apricot is dark gray. That's fine. They chose that because it's, it's easy, it's basic, whatever. I do not use the default color very often. If I have helped build your Apricot, you know I kind of like color to a ridiculous extent. So I don't use default color very often. That's not to say that you can't. The gray is really easy. It looks nice. Don't feel bad if you want to use the gray. However, when you're working on an HTML bulletin, you get this option to select the header color. The header color is going to be this top bar here where it says bulletin details. So on your home screen, you can use header color to differentiate between types of bulletins, between programs, between whatever it is that you'd like to differentiate. When you click on the color header, or the header color, it's going to open a color palette, and I'll show you that when we get into Apricot. And my suggestion is just across the board to always use your logo colors, to use colors that are common within your organization, and to use colors that aren't going to give people a headache. Avoid neon colors, things like that. And then the last part of the HTML bulletin is that, and you'll see this much better when we get into Apricot, but you almost get this text editor. I don't know if anyone's ever had a blog or anything like that. It's just a very standard, text editing functionality. So you've got things like insert an image, insert a table. You can mess with how the text is justified, bold, italic, all the very standard editing. You can't get too fancy. There's only so many fonts available. The color options are actually not wonderful. You only have access to, I believe, 20 colors that you can change the font on. So, it's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. So when we get into Apricot, I'll show you what it looks like to actually get text and things in there. So here are some examples of HTML bulletins. The top one, for anyone who has an Apricot support ticket, you'll recognize this. This is actually a linkable image. So these are my favorite things. And I'll show you how to do that when we get into Apricot. This next one is just an image. So most of you have your logo or something similar. You can insert any kind of image, and I'll be showing you that when we get into Apricot. And then these last ones are shortcut buttons. And when you click on these buttons, they take you to a specific place in the database that you have indicated in your HTML, which sounds scary, but it's not. It's pretty cool. So we'll be building together one of each type of these bulletins so you can see an example of how they work. So before we get into Apricot, I want to give you a little bit of overview of HTML. For those of you who don't know what HTML is, it's the code on the back end of Apricot, of a web page, of anything that is internet-based that tells the front end what to do. So this top part here is the code, the HTML that you use to create a button. And there's very I don't understand all of it, but I'm going to do my best to explain. So these P's at the end are essentially, I want something to happen between this P and between this P. So those are your line breaks. They're the things that start and stop your HTML code. The blue is your hyperlink. So that's where you're going to put, when you click on this button, where do you want me to go? Like what magic happens when I click this button? The green is telling you what kind of button do you want. So this first part is, I want a button, and BTN is HTML code for button. We're saying we want the button to be gray and that we want the button to have rounded corners. Why? I don't know. I've literally used this over and over because it was the button text that Apricot provided us. So that's what we've done. So you've got this gibberish code, and what it does is it makes a button. So as you'll see, what we did is we said we've got a button, it's going to be gray, it's going to have round edges, and then the magic is this orange part, which is the button title. So what do you want the button to say? You put in brackets what you want the button to say, and it will make this button for you that says button title. Don't make a button that says button title, but still, just as an example, this is kind of how you take things from HTML to actual user buttons that users are able to use. Okay, so we are going to actually switch over, get into Apricot, and I am going to show you how to make an example of each of these types of bulletins. So here we are in Apricot. The first thing that we're going to do is make something that is linkable. So we're going to make a button that is similar to this Apricot support ticket. We are going to insert an image, and we're going to collectively roll our eyes at how dumb it is, but you're going to, once you know, and it's pretty cool. And then we're going to make a button. So for those of you who have not built or worked in bulletins, you have to be an administrator. So you've got to toggle to the back end. So we're going to go to administrator. And then for some reason, bulletins are over here in your gray menu in workflow station. The more you work in Apricot, the more you're going to realize things aren't always in the most intuitive place. But bulletins is stored under workflow station. You get into bulletins and you'll see that bulletins are organized very similarly to the way that reports, forms, other things in Apricot are organized. So you want to make sure that things are well labeled, but you also want to make sure that they're in the right order. And the reason that I say that is because the order they're on this list is the order they're going to appear on your home screen. So if you want your Apricot support ticket to be on the top, you don't want it down here because it's not going to be on the top. It has to be on the top. And as you'll see, drag and drop. So it's really easy to just quickly put things in the order you want. Similarly, like when you're in the folder itself, bulletins have to be in the order you want them to show up. So it's like tier 1, tier 2. So when you structure your folders, you're actually structuring your home screen. So just make sure that things are in the actual order that you want them. To create a new bulletin, you're going to go over here to create new bulletin. If you realize that you need to create a new category, like you actually are like, oh, there's not a folder that makes sense for my new bulletin, you can create a new category. It will just create a new folder, kind of similar to a tier 1, tier 2 form structure. But in this case, I just want to create a new bulletin. So I'm going to create a new one, and it's going to ask me, what category do you want this bulletin in? Well, I'm going to put it randomly in Apricot support ticket, and I'm going to call this a test bulletin. Perfect. Then it takes you to the bulletin builder. I always feel like I am working in a blog because it feels very, I don't know, bloggy for some reason. But it also makes it really easy to use. So I'm going to show you first just quickly how to make a report bulletin. It's really not that hard. Type of bulletin, we're going to toggle over to report. It's going to switch up because it doesn't give you the option to put in text or anything like that, but it does give you the option to select a report. So we're gonna scroll through and figure out which one we want to show on our home screen. So I'm actually gonna do volunteer hours by month, which is a report Heather built in our last session. And I know that this is a 2-section report, or I believe it's a 2-section report. So I'm gonna actually select 2 columns. And then, because gray is boring, I'm going to make it not gray. So I unselected, use default color. And now, as I had mentioned, you can click on this. So you get this, I don't know if you like these, I'm not particularly a fan. However, the part that I love, and you have to be in Chrome in order to access this, just so you know, but there's this little dropper thingy. And if you haven't used this, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. Because what it lets you do is when you click on the dropper, you now have this superpower to go pick a color from anywhere on your screen. So this is the way that I match colors exactly to your logo. I don't want it to get in and have 16 shades of blue. I just want to have it be blue that's in your logo. So I always use the color picker to make sure that things are accurate. So I'm just going to go find a color. I'm going to hover over here and I'm going to make it this kind of ugly green. We're just going to go with the kind of ugly green. There, it changed. And now when we save this bulletin, it's going to be a 2-column bulletin that's kind of ugly. So I'm going to hit save. And the way to quickly test bulletins is, as an administrator, you don't have to have access. You default get it. So before you start going and granting folks access, make sure that the bulletin does what you want, is in the place you want it, etc. So I'm just going to hop back to the front end real quick. And there you go. World's ugliest bulletin. Hidden. When you unhide it, bam, 2-section report. What's nice about these is that it doesn't make you go into the report. If you want to refresh, you hit refresh. It gives you live data without having to go anywhere into the system. It also gives you a quick glance at how reports can or cannot be helpful. So you look at it and you go, okay, does this actually tell me anything helpful? And then you determine, how should I set up my bulletins to make them more useful to staff? We're going to go back and we're going to switch gears. So now I showed you how to make a report bulletin. Now we're going to get into some HTML. Love this. Don't freak out. So I'm going to switch HTML, and now we're back to our little magic maker. So you can use this for very basic things. So for example, if you were like, I want to just put a bulletin that shows upcoming events, you can get in there, upcoming events. You can make it blue and underline it, and then you can say, I want it to be a bullet list. A thing is happening on Tuesday. Great. You can make this not blue. You can make this not underlined. Like, it's basically, you're just building and playing around with whatever you want it to say. There's some cool functionalities, so you can play in styles. I don't know why, but I really like special containers because they give things fancy blockies, but you're going to find that you're going to just have to play with it. You're going to click something and you're going to be like, no, I didn't want that. Okay, I'll make it italic. No, that's ugly. So there's no right or wrong way to do this. Like, put in there what you like, publish it, see if it looks good, like if it does what you want it to do, and just tinker with it accordingly. So for example, if we save this and go back, my bad, not back, here, we have now switched. So upcoming events, a thing is happening on Tuesday. Great. Whoever has access will see this. Things like upcoming events, it's probably best to just share them org-wide. That way you don't have to monitor multiple program bulletins. It's just something that everyone sees. So that's the easy version of an HTML bulletin, but there's so much more that you can do. So we're going to clear this out. And the first thing that I'm going to show you how to do is how to insert a photo. And I hope you're ready, because this is the most unintuitive thing you will ever see. So to insert a photo, it seems like it's going to be easy because the HTML format gives you this little mountain moon picture that is insert an image. So when you click on this, this new screen is going to open. And the first time I did this, I spent 10 minutes looking for the like upload button, like go find a photo on your desktop. There is not one. There's no magic button to upload a photo. Instead, you have to tell Apricot where the photo is located in order to put it on your bulletin. So it sounds really like vague, but ultimately what you have to do is you have to find the photos or images or icons that you would like on your Apricot, and you need to save them in your Apricot. So you don't want them out in the ether. You don't want them on your desktop. You want them in a centralized location, which is your Apricot. So the place that you store images is actually going to be in your shared files. So the shared files is a section of your Apricot. It's also under I guess we're not in administrator view. When you're in administrator view, it's under workflow station, and that's where you manage it. When you're on the front end, it's in my Apricot tools, my shared files. So this is what I call, Apricot Dropbox. I'm sure many of you have heard me say that. And then in all of my shared files, I keep a folder that is for images. So in this case, we're going to open this up, and you're going to see that we have a Stronger Together logo, an Apricot ticket image, and then a program announcement picture or something. So you want to make sure that when you select the photo, you're picking the right one. So you can actually go over to Actions and hit Preview. And this lets you know, great, I am inserting the correct photo. Something I just want to put on your radar is you're going to want to put in the highest quality photo possible. When you start tinkering with size and moving things around, if you have a low quality photo, it's just going to get more and more grainy and pixelated. And Apricot's really sharp. It's really clean. Things are very high quality. So it's going to look a little off if you've got a low quality image. So just always be on the lookout for the highest quality image possible. So for example, this one, pretty high quality. I feel good about it. And this I know is the image that I want to use. So here is what you do. You go to the photo that you want to insert. You go to the end, you hover over Actions, and you go down to Download. You don't click. At this point, I have not clicked on anything. You are going to right click. No, you're going to right click. Thank you. And it's going to give you your image options. So most of you probably don't use this. Maybe some of you have never seen this. You're not going to actually download the photo. You are going to select the image location. So you want copy link address. Why? I am not entirely sure. But what this does is this link address is going to tell Apricot, go to my Apricot, go to my shared files, and give me the Stronger Together logo. So you copy the link address. Once you've copied it, it is now in your clipboard, which is like your virtual place where your copied things go, and you're good to go. You can head back on over to your test bulletin. Now, when you see URL, you have something to put there. So the URL is the location of your photo. So I'm paste in the URL of the image we just looked at, and I'm going to click out of there. Ta-da. So we have just inserted an image. It looks good, cool, high quality, but you're going to notice that there's this weird gibberish text below. Ignore it. You can't delete it. What it is, it's a placeholder for coders on the back end to have a space for you to work in. It's not going to show on the front end. It shouldn't impact any of your bulletins in any way. It's just there. Anything above that weird text is what's actually going to show up in your bulletin. So just ignore it. As long as whatever you're trying to make in your bulletin is above, you're fine. So I actually have found that images come in at too high of quality. They're kind of too big. So I try to resize them. Little best practice, the width of your image should not be, in most cases, over 600. 600 is the standard width of a computer screen. So if you make something bigger than 600, somebody's screen is going to have the photo falling off the end, and so it won't look complete. So I always try to keep my images under 600 pixels. The other thing that I want to point out that there's this lock. If you've made any kind of photo editing in Word or PowerPoint, this lock is really important because what it does is lock the ratio. So if I were to change the width of this photo without the lock on to 550, it's gonna smash it because it didn't change the width and the height, it just changed the width. So instead, I'm gonna lock it. I'm gonna change this to 500, and the quality of the photo stayed the same because the width and the height adjusted accordingly. So you always wanna make sure that you keep that lock on so your picture doesn't get all wonky. There's a couple other things that you can do. I don't do these things very often. That doesn't mean that you can't. If you want to put a border on it, you add a border. This is all done in pixels. So 1 pixel is a very thin line up to, 10 pixels, 100 pixels. Don't do that, it'll look terrible. But if you'd like to put a border on your images to like break things up, whatever it is, you can do that from here. You can also do a thing where you move your image horizontally and vertically. Again, I don't do this very often. I just move it around when you go back to that edit screen. But if you wanted to move it in 5 pixels and down 10 pixels, you can. It's not like, it really depends on how much you want to get into the nitty gritty. I have fun tinkering with it, but I usually end up just using the standard way the photo comes. So I'm going to take all these out. I'm going to get rid of that border. And then the last thing is the alignment. So this is pretty standard. You've got your alignment and you're either going to justify your photo on the left or on the right. You'll notice that there is no center. I like things centered. So if you want things centered, stay on no set and you will edit the photo's alignment once you get out of this builder. So that is how you insert an image, but I want to level it up. I want this image to be a hot link. I want something to happen when you click on this image. So there's a section up at the top here next to the image information, which is link. So because it's all on the same screen, the link that you're going to be putting in directly corresponds to this image. So I'm going to hit link. And it's going to say, okay, what URL what do you want to happen when I click on this image? Well, I want it to take me to the Capacity Collective website. And when someone clicks on that image, I want it to open in a new window. So the target is what happens when someone clicks on the image. So you can have a new window. You can have it appear on your topmost window. So if you're like me and you have 200 browsers open, it will pop up on the one you currently have open. You can pop up in the same window, which is going to be annoying if you're in the middle of something because it's going to replace the screen that you're on. So I advise against that. Or you can open it in a parent window, which is a new browser of the same, a new tab of the same browser. I find it easier to just open a new window. Then it doesn't mess up anything that you're currently working on. So I'm going to keep it on new window. Hit OK. Now we have inserted an image. It's there. It's beautiful. And you'll notice that it has a blue border around it. It doesn't typically have a blue border around it. If the border around it is blue, it is hot linked. You have now linked something to this image. Think about when you're in a Word doc and you add link to a text and it turns blue and gets an underline and you're like, yep, that now has a link. Same thing in Apricot. It's just the square that goes around the image. So now we have an image and we have a link on the image. The next thing that we're going to do is insert a button. So I want to show you what this looks like, and then we're going to come back, clear this out, and add a button. So I'm going to save this just because I want to show you what it looks like. So it's saved. Okay, cool. Everything's great. Let's hop to the front end and see what this looks like. We're going to open the world's ugliest green bulletin. There we go. There's our image. It's beautiful. You'll notice that the blue box went away, which is probably good because the blue box would not be as aesthetically pleasing. However, you're going to notice something. If we go down to this Stronger Together logo and hover over it, our cursor stays as a black arrow. Nothing happens. But if we go up to this image, our arrow turns into, I call this the Mickey Mouse hand because it looks like Mickey Mouse hand. You get the option to actually click on something. Black arrow, white arrow. So when you click, you get embarrassed because Apricot's misbehaving, but it still took us somewhere. It didn't take us very far, but it took us somewhere. So this is another reason that you want to test your bulletins before you use them or before you tell staff that they're live, because this will inevitably happen and you will be like inundated with messages from people, my button doesn't work. Okay, well, test it. So in an ideal world, when we clicked on this image, it would have taken us to the Capacity Collective website. For whatever reason, it did not. So we would go back into the bulletin, fix it, figure out why it didn't work. We don't have time to necessarily do that. So super sorry it didn't work and look pretty. But if you want to practice with us, come to office hours, we'll walk you through it. So we're going to go back and you'll notice that I am using back. In bulletin world, you can do that. When you're working on a form, would not suggest it. When you're working on a bulletin, you can literally back and forth. And I love it because it's really easy for you to go save, test. Nope, got to go back and fix something. Save, test. So it allows you to just toggle back and forth without having to go administrator, bulletins, back in. So just know that that's a shortcut you can use. So now that we're back in our test bulletin, I'm going to clear all this out. Bye-bye. We're going to start over. So to make a button, and don't try to reinvent wheels here. This is how we learned how to do it. This is how we suggest you learn how to do it. There is an Apricot article out there that's all about inserting buttons. And what they did is they provided us with the template, if you will. So there is template HTML text that Apricot provided us. And this is what it looks like. Kind of scary, I know. So in order to mess with the HTML, you actually have to get into source. And what source does is it takes you into the behind the scenes. So right now we are on the front end. I can type, I can change colors, I can do whatever I want. But the second you move to source, things get crazy. So you are now on the back end. Front end, back end. The text changes, all of your options gray out, you lose the ability to do any customization beyond entering HTML text. So for simplicity's sake, I'm actually going to get rid of this gibberish, and we're just going to focus on the actual HTML code. So the first thing that you need to do when thinking about a button is you need to think about, one, what do you want the button to do? When somebody clicks on the button, what kind of magic thing do you want to happen? And then what do you want the button to say? Like it can't just say button. So you want to give it a title where when people are clicking, they know exactly what's going to happen. So when we hop into source, this took me a really long time. So just bear with me. You'll notice that starting here, all the way to here, and you know this because it's separated by semicolons. This is a URL. So this text right here is the target. It is the location that the person is going to go when they click on the button. So you need to identify, what do I want the button to do? So in this example, I want to create a button that sends my Apricot users to the place where they can search for a client. And as we all know, there's many ways to search for a client, but having a button is one of the easiest. So you need to go to the location in Apricot that you want to send people to. So I've already got a tab open. And what I did is I went to, from the front end, search records, client intake profile. because in most cases, this is where you're going to go to search for a client. Like this is where you can apply your filters. This is where you go to find clients. So this up here, what I now have highlighted in pink, red, whatever color that is the URL. That is the location of this web page. So this is what you're going to use to tell the button where to go. So I'm on this page. This is the location. I'm going to copy that location. That's where I want my button to take me. You're going to go back, and in this place that starts with HTTPS, you are going to not work. You're going to try to do things correctly. You're going to paste. Okay, so here is the location that our button's going to take us to. It's an Apricot location, which is run by Social Solutions. It's a document. It's taking us to a search, not to an actual document. And then the form ID is that of 16. Not sure what that means, but that's what the URL says. Then you scroll through the remainder of the HTML text, and you'll notice that from those slides, type equals button, it's kind of all the same language. And then you'll notice that we get to this part down here where you see text that doesn't look like gibberish. So it says search for a client. That text is what you say your button is called. So find a client. Okay, great. So I've told it button needs to say find a client, and when they click on that button, it needs to take them to the search space for client intake profile. Now we have to test it though, because it's HTML and things can go horribly awry. So what I'm going to do is before I save, I'm going to get out of the back end and back into the front end of our bulletin and see what happens. So I'm going to click source, and it didn't work. And now I don't know why.
I think some of in the copying and pasting, some of the code, like the quotes turned into the code for quotes. So try in chat.
Okay.
Start over with the base. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So see here, what happened is we lost the quotes. So if we go source, quote, Heather, why isn't it working? I make these all the time.
In the chat, I sent you the base text.
Aha. Okay. So what happened? I messed up. So what happened is I was pasting the location of the button on the front end. And so it was manipulating the text because it was trying to read it as HTML. So let me just show you what I mean by that. So let's take this out. By the way, there's a button. If I paste this here, it changes when it goes to source. So it turned the quotes into quote words, which isn't what we want. We want it to read those as actual quotes. So if I paste it in the back end, that's when the magic happens. So now we've said, go to the search for a client, and we're going to rename it, as I did before, find a client. Now, if we click back to the front end, my hope is that we don't have to do this 700 other times. Ta-da, we have a button. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the button's going to work. Super sorry. This could just mean that we have a button and it leads us to nowhere. So again, let's go test it. Hit save, go to the front, green bulletin, check out that button. You know it's linked to something, same as images. If you hover over it, once you get the Mickey Mouse hand, you know that it's linked to something. Doesn't mean it's linked to the right place though. Let's click on it and see what happens. Bam. Now we took them to search for a client. Not that it was that much harder, but we now have a button on the home screen that will take us to search for clients. Buttons can be used for a variety of things. So down here, you'll notice we've got search for a client. We also have the option to create a new client intake profile. So if you click there, you get embarrassed yet again. Seriously, y'all, we've got to work on our permissions. But in an ideal world, what this would do is this would take us to an empty intake form that you could then fill out. So you can use buttons to direct people to any part of Apricot, which is super cool. Okay. Let me see where we are in our extravaganza. Well, we showed you how to insert a button. We've showed you how to link something to an image. We've showed you how to insert an image. One of the ways I want to show you how to use linkable images is this Apricot support ticket up here. So for those of you who have worked with us in building your Apricot, a lot of you have this functionality at the top called Submit an Apricot Support Ticket. And what this is this is a form that we have created internally that allows folks that we work with to submit help tickets. So if you get stuck, if you have a question, if something breaks, you can submit a ticket and it alerts us to know that we need to go in and fix something. The problem is that, and you're going to run into this, as you know, guest users can only have access to so many things. So we developed a workaround. And you haven't learned about these yet, but you will be in 2 sessions. Helen's going to be walking you through all of this. But a way to work around folks needing to access a form on a bulletin that they don't have access to in Apricot is to turn the form into an Apricot Connect link. So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, bear with me, you're going to learn eventually. But this is an example of an Apricot Connect form. So similarly to the way like a Google Forms link would work, Apricot has the same thing. So you can turn any form in Apricot into an external link that anyone can access. So if you don't have access to the Apricot form, this is the workaround. So what we've done is on your home screen here, we have linked Submit an Apricot Support Ticket to this external form. So regardless of whether or not you can actually access this form within Apricot, you can still submit a ticket. So it's this sneaky workaround, but it's also used as a button type bulletin because it's the easiest way to make sure that all users have access. So many, many ways to use buttons. I have learned new things about bulletins every day. I swear we learn from each other all the time. I know that was a lot of information. So please, please do, if you have any questions or you want to create a bulletin with us, come to office hours. We love this stuff. We want to make sure that the dashboards and bulletins that you're using are useful. Like I said in the beginning, your home screen will get crazy. Like the more bulletins you add, every bulletin you add is one more thing that's going to show up on your home screen. So just make sure that you're being really methodical in how you build those bulletins. So we're going to get out of Apricot and actually switch back into some slides. And this is where we're going to make a transition. So shake it all off, knock all that HTML knowledge out of your head, take a deep breath, because we're going to do a little something new. Hi, everyone. I hope you had so much fun meeting all your people. So we're actually going to do that again. And since we had an awkward experience getting you all in rooms, I'm going to take a minute and try to put us in different rooms. If anyone has any share outs that they would like, if something came up where you're like, ooh, this was really interesting that someone said, let's take a couple minutes and share out while I put us all in rooms. So if anyone is like, I want to talk, go for it.
I will just throw out I love to talk about Apricot as just a whole thing. So if anyone wants to like connect with me, I like to talk in general. So feel free. I'm Kate B as in boy at openarmsps.org. And also I can talk now. Just talk all the time. I was telling folks that are still in the forms building stage to be really cognizant of what they label individual fields. and like the options of the fields, because the title of the fields you can change really easily moving forward, but the options you can't. So some things that I wish we would have like thought about. Well, you can, it's just a lot of work and I don't want to do it. But so like if it's Black/African American for a race, like consider if we have Somali clients, maybe we should have made Black an option, African American a separate option, or African a separate option. Now we can't really pull those apart. Or be careful with your acronyms. Like if we use API for Asian Pacific Islander, and then we have volunteers that don't know what that means, we can't really go back and change that to Asian Pacific Islander without losing historical data. So just for those of you building your forms, definitely take some time. We have one that has a caret, or, you know, like less than, greater than. It's constantly checked off wrong. Like we should have just written greater than. Those things when you're building forms.
I would say of all of us, Kate has been working as an Apricot administrator the longest. So if you're ever like, man, I am sick of talking to the Capacity Collective, I give you full permission to talk to Kate.
Thank you. Something that came up in our group was just talking about the learning curve of going from a only paper process. Maybe it's the transition from paper to anything technical. Maybe it's the just changing systems. And so it's just a learning curve that can take time, and there's various factors that go along with that. Totally.
I think in our group, I got to meet Jamie, who works also for Open Arms, and I'm learning that like Open Arms has been doing Apricot for a while, and also curious how much staff capacity, or like how you structure the administrative role, who does it, and how does that flow down? Like I'm really curious because we're just entering into this new relationship with Apricot, and so just am really curious how other organizations are structuring and dividing up the work.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Janae was our Apricot administrator, and then I felt bad having to ask Janae constantly to archive stuff because there's no delete function, and I would make a mistake and I'd be like, oh, sorry, Janae. So then I became Apricot administrator. And then as we've grown, we've added our programs kind of one at a time. And we're growing and growing. And so now it's more important that we have more dedicated time to just being an administrator on Apricot. And I think that, yeah, so we talked about this a little bit in our group. We started with like kind of open permissions for everyone and are kind of reining that back in. That's our challenge right now. When we first moved to Apricot, we're like, give everyone access and see what everyone can do. And then now we're realizing like, oh, we need to be a little more intentional and have like fewer people have access, and then more targeted decisions around your super user for your program. These are, you know, these are the things you can do. And then having more of me and Janae and Sarah as like the administrators that can change things. And we're actually working right now, probably should have done it a little earlier, on like a flow sheet of what folks can change. So saying like, these are our shared forms, nobody can touch them except for Janae. These are our program forms where your program super user can touch them at will, and kind of making more of a transparent flow chart around permissions and use.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. That's exactly true. I do have a unique relationship with Open Arms in that I am internal to their organization. So I'm actually like part of the Open Arms team and part of the Capacity Collective team. It just happens to be the dynamic of our relationship. That is an offer. Our team, like if folks are like, look, we can't hire a full-time person, but we still need support, like our team can help to kind of fill that gap. So Open Arms just happens to be the only organization we're working with right now. So they get a lot of time with us. But yeah, I'm loving how this conversation is going. And I think it's really important that we continue giving you space to connect. So we're going to actually split into another breakout room. I did my very best to make sure that we're meeting with different people, so you're not all like talking to the same folks. We're going to do a little bit shorter this time, just so we have an opportunity to go through our last few slides. But I'm going to send you all off, and we'll see you all in a few minutes. Everyone back? Yep. Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had amazing conversations and feel like you've made new Apricot friends. I know we're over time, so I'm going to do this quickly. So please bear with me. Homework 4. We did you a favor. We are not going to make you go do HTML coding in a bulletin, but instead we're going to give you a pretty unique opportunity that we want to help you co-create. So we are in the process of developing a local Apricot learning group. We want you all to have access to each other and have the opportunity to learn from each other. So the homework this week is actually going to be a short survey that allows you to opt in or opt out to a local Apricot learning group. Our time together is eventually going to end. And I'm not kidding, we're legit sad. We want to work with you all forever. But to ensure that you have a support group moving forward, we want to give you the opportunity to opt into this group. So just like every other time you've done your homework, you're going to log into the Apricot Admin Camp portal. One of my colleagues will drop the link in the chat. If you don't get it in the chat, we will also be sending it out in a follow-up email, but it's the same process. Click on fill out homework 4. It's very short and very quick. So just please do that. You don't actually have to use many IQ points to rock this survey out. Next steps, a colleague is going to be dropping a link to our session evaluation in the chat. Please take it. We take your feedback seriously. We will adapt based on what we hear from you. So, just know we value that feedback. We're going to be following up with a quick guide. The quick guide is going to be the holy grail. If you want to insert HTML text into a bulletin, you're going to need that quick guide. We'll also be sending out a link to the homework, and you can sign up for office hours. And like I said, office hours are going to be next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we would love for you to come and hang out with us. Thank you all. I know we're over time. You rock. I'm so glad you got to meet each other, and we hope to see you next time when we talk about attendance.